Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to this week's Chrestman Conversation. This week, we are going to be talking about Bernie Sanders because this week, Bernie Sanders has just decided he wants to spend all of your money. He came out with a plan this week. He said they're going to cancel everyone's medical debt in the country. Now, this obviously come after he passes Medicare for all, but he wants to cancel all outstanding medical debt. Now, this amounts to about $81 billion. That was the estimate, at least that I've seen put forth. Okay, so why are we doing this? A lot of people think that healthcare should be a right, it's a guaranteed right for everyone in the country. I disagree, but we're not going to get into healthcare or how we should fix that this week because there are definitely some issues with our healthcare system. Instead, we're going to just talk about the fact that we shouldn't be arbitrarily canceling debt. Now, there's a large question of how are we going to do this? Because I'm going to just take today to read off a lot of, these are directly from Bernie Sanders' campaign website. All the things that he wants to spend money on. Now, this is just $81 billion. That's a drop in the bucket to Bernie Sanders. $81 billion to cancel outstanding medical debt is one of his smaller proposals. It almost is like the United States isn't trillions of dollars in debt the way that the Democratic side of the aisle appears to want to spend your money. So this week he came out and said, all right, we're also going to cancel all outstanding medical debt on top of all these other programs I have. It's just another $81 billion. You know, what's $81 billion? But we're going to go through right now. We're going to read off some of his other proposals and how much money those will cost. And then we can talk about why it's just insane to think that we're going to be able to afford any of this. So the first couple on his website, the $81 billion medical debt is going to be wiped out. That'd be nice. Going to cancel $1.6 trillion of student debt that's outstanding. Okay. Seems a bit unfair to people who paid their student loans off. For example, I didn't go to a four-year university. I don't have any student debt. And what is interesting is that canceling student debt takes money away from poor and middle class people and pays off debt to upper middle and upper class people in society. So, for example, I didn't go to a four-year university, but my taxes are going to be used to pay off everyone else's student loans. Well, I don't have student loans. I did that for a reason. My job, the reason I picked my career, it was a lot of personal choice, a lot of preference in what I do for a living. But also a lot of it was the fact that I didn't want to go waste a bunch of money at school. This was I took a semester off after high school because I didn't want to just go to school. Now, I don't expect everyone to do that when they're 18, but the idea that now I'm going to pay $1.6 trillion for everyone's student debt, well, why? Why should I do that? Okay, but that's just $1.6 trillion. That's fine. We're going to introduce a college for all. We're going to introduce college for all. Well, that's just going to be $70 billion a year that Bernie Sanders wants to spend on college for all. Again, this is unnecessary. The idea that everyone should go to college is ridiculous. Our current university system needs a complete overhaul. And the reason why college is so expensive in the first place has a lot to do with the federal government subsidizing loans. So why don't we just stop doing that, and then you'll see the price of college drop dramatically. Because it used to be you had to go to a bank and ask for a loan, and they would take a look and say, okay, this person's going to go study something. They seem like a good investment. Let's give them some money. And then the federal government said, well, you can go study whatever you want, and people now get degrees in nonsense and then come out and work minimum wage jobs with a 4-year degree and $80,000 in debt. That is from the federal government. That is not because colleges just realized, oh, we can charge whatever we want and it'll be paid for. Now, there's a lot of other things that go into that, but the idea that we're going to make college free for everyone, if you come out of college with a 4-year degree today, you're having a hard time finding a job. So we're going to make college free for everyone. We're going to It's just not a great idea. The idea that, first of all, everyone needs to go to college is false. We need to encourage more people to go to trade schools. We need to encourage more people to pursue things outside of academia. And this is coming from someone who loves education. I don't love college. I love education. I think everyone should be learning all the time. But that's $70 billion a year Bernie Sanders wants to spend on top of the $1.6 trillion, on top of the $81 billion. All right, what else we have? We're not going to discuss all of the ways in which the Green New Deal is terrible, but we're going to discuss the fact that he's going to do $300 billion for public transport. He wants to invest $300 billion in public transport. Now, this is just a small sliver of the Green New Deal. This is actually one of the lower costing things, the $300 billion to invest in public transportation. So he wants to spend $300 billion so you can ride the bus and possibly on a train. You know, they're going to build a high-speed rail. That'd be great. We do need an overhaul in our infrastructure. There's a lot of that. That's going to be excellent. But, again, most of the things that are in the Green New Deal are just going to destroy the economy. So this $300 billion is actually a small investment because the rest of the Green New Deal is the part that's actually going to destroy our economy. But another $300 billion investment right there. Introduce a universal child care and pre-kindergarten program. Okay. I think this is good. There's a lot of things that could happen if people get child care and pre-kindergarten care. It'd do a lot of good. However, again, it's an expense, and why should I pay for it? I don't have children. Why am I paying for someone else's children? If you want to have a child, make a reasonable choice. Have a child when you are financially stable and ready to have children. Then I don't have to worry about raising your children. You can worry about raising your children. Health care for all. Now this is again, we're not going to touch on all the details, all the reasons why this is terrible, but health care for all. We're going to get rid of private insurance. We're going to have Medicare for all. Okay, Medicare for all. According to Bernie Sanders, and according to a lot of people who endorse Medicare for all, which a lot of the Democratic candidates running right now. Some of them are running away from this currently, but that's only because they've recognized that it is politically more toxic than they realized. You're going to take away 150 million people's health insurance, and you're going to give them new health insurance. What if you're happy with your health insurance? They're realizing that a lot of people are. I'm fine with mine. For example, I have employer-based health insurance. It's fine. So health care for all, Medicare for all. According to Bernie Sanders, according to a lot of people who embrace this plan, it is going to save us money. Now, that would be great. Our healthcare system, again, we're going to do an entire episode about the healthcare system at some point in the future. Not today. It is much too complex an issue. It needs its own episode. So we're not going to touch on all the ways that, if given a magic wand, I would fix the healthcare system. But we are going to talk about the spending that we do on healthcare. According to Bernie Sanders, this is going to save us money. Medicare for all is going to save us money. We're going to get rid of employer-based insurance, and it's going to cost people more in taxes, but we're going to save money because you're not paying premiums. Okay, now this might be good. He estimates, according to his website, it's going to cost us $14 trillion over the next decade. You say, okay, that's a lot of money. However, if you look at what we currently spend $1.5 trillion a year on healthcare. So you say, well, that actually saves us $1 trillion over the next decade. Well, that's awesome. If we can actually save $1 trillion over the next decade, it seems like a win. However, that number, that $14 trillion, that was put forth by Bernie Sanders and his independent research team that he commissioned. Every other study that has been done about Medicare for all has estimated that it is going to be between $28 and $32 trillion. Double or more than double what Bernie Sanders himself and his campaign have put forth as an estimate. Now, this will explode our spending on healthcare. We're going to double what we spend on healthcare. We're going to cut it. And there's no way around that. We are going to double. We're going to spend $32 trillion over the next decade instead of $15 trillion. We're not going to need a little increase in taxes to pay for this. We're going to need a gigantic increase in taxes. If you look at the Scandinavian countries on which this Medicare for all system is based, if you make over $40,000 a year, you pay a 60% personal income tax to the government. They take 60% of your money to pay for healthcare for everyone. Why is your health care my responsibility? I think that we should be compassionate. We should help people who are struggling. This is absolutely true. This is why I believe firmly in charity, volunteering your time, doing things that make a difference in your community. But the things that we disagree with, the things where I disagree with Bernie Sanders, it comes down to the fact that I believe that people should have that altruistic trait. You should help others. But it is not the government's role to help everybody. It is the government's role to stay out of your life, to protect your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not the government's job to give you happiness. It's the job to keep you safe from other people and to protect your rights against invasion from other people looking to infringe upon them. But it is not to give you health care. And it is a fundamental difference between, for example, someone who is on the conservative side or a libertarian and a Democrat at this point in history. I believe that people should give more money to charity. I think that it is important to give money to charity, to volunteer your time to help those in need. These are important things. But government mandated intervention is not charity. The government taking 60% of my money to pay other people is not charity, and I don't want that to happen. It's a terrible infringement on your right. You go and work a job. You put in hours. You work very hard. And then the government just takes 60% of your money to pay other people. For what? Why should they have your money that you're working for? Again, if you want to help those people, I think that's awesome. That is amazing. You are a good person if you choose to help them. But forcing people to give charity is actually not okay, because that is an infringement on their right. Maybe they just want to be a miser. Maybe they don't want to help people. Maybe they're a bad person. Okay, I think you should be a good person. But you don't get to be charitable with other people's money. So that's what Bernie Sanders wants to do. He wants to help everybody, which is awesome. That's great. But you don't get to be charitable with other people's money. You don't get to then say, well, we need to help this person. Here, give me your wallet so I can help them. No, that's not how it works. If you want to help them, go help them. I encourage you to do that. But you don't get to take my money to do it. So again, we're going to spend $32 trillion over the next decade on healthcare. Now this is, again, just to go back, on top of universal pre-K, on top of the $300 billion for public transport, on top of the $70 billion per year for college for all, canceling $1.6 trillion in student debt, canceling $81 billion in medical debt. The other bits of the Green New Deal, completely destroying our economy. We're going to get rid of all fossil fuels in the next decade. We're going to transition away from all fossil fuels. Okay, good luck. Again, destroying the American economy by doing that. Oh, just Democrats don't. Bernie Sanders' own financial campaign advisor one day said, we don't have to worry about money. You can just print more. That's how they view spending. Oh, we could just print more. Again, I will knock Republicans because when Republicans get in office, they blow out the deficit too. This is terrible. This is not conservative by definition. You can't blow out the deficit. That's what Donald Trump has been doing. Donald Trump did a good thing. He cut taxes. That's awesome. That is excellent. But you can't cut taxes and then not cut spending because guess what? Then your deficit grows, which is exactly what happened. We cut taxes. We didn't cut spending. The deficit grew. Everyone said, look, Donald Trump's growing the deficit. And it's, yeah, because you only did half of the steps. You have to cut some of this nonsensical spending that we do. All right. Going back to our list of Bernie Sanders plans. So the $32 trillion over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office, Medicare will be insolvent by 2026. Now that's as it stands right now. We have about 7 years left before we don't know how we're going to pay for Medicare. Now that's already under the current system. In order to keep our current system the way it is, we're going to have to tax us more already to make Medicare work in the future. Social Security, by the way, 2036. We don't know how we pay for Social Security after 2036. We have no idea. We're going to have to increase taxes to fund these things. But Bernie Sanders wants to get rid of Medicare the way it currently is, and he wants to give it to everyone. Again, explain to me how we pay for this. We already can't pay for it. We already don't know how to pay for it. By 2026, we have 7 years of Medicare left before we just say, oh, well, I don't know. But we're going to give it to everyone, and we're just going to magically be able to pay for it. Now, according to Bernie Sanders, according to people on the left, the way that you pay for these things is you make the wealthy pay their fair share. Okay. Is that going to work? Are we going to just tax the rich to make them pay their fair share? Will that work? Well, why don't we break down some numbers? I'm a numbers person. I like facts. I don't like rhetoric. When you say tax the rich, okay, let's talk about the rich. Let's talk about how much they pay in taxes. So, for example, the top 1%, the 1% of those evil rich people, the top 1% paid a greater share of individual income taxes than the bottom 90% combined. The top 1% paid 37.3% of all income taxes in the country. The bottom 90% combined. The bottom 90% paid 30.5%. So we're all the 1% paying their fair share. They pay the top 1% pays for 37.3% of the taxes already. Are they not paying their fair share? Are we going to just tax them more? Why? Why are we allowed to just do that? Why are we allowed to just say that? We're going to tax the rich. They're not paying their fair share. They paid 37%. The 1% of people in this country funded 37% of the income tax. Okay, what else we got? The top 50% of all taxpayers paid 97% of the total income taxes. So if you're in the top half, you already pay for almost everyone, because the bottom half doesn't pay anything. Let's see, that in 2016, the bottom 50% of taxpayers, those who make below $40,000 a year, earned 11.6% of the total revenue in the country. So the bottom 50% earned 11% of the money. Now this group, they paid $43.9 billion, or 3% of taxes in all of 2016. So the bottom 50% pay 3% of the taxes. Okay, so you want to talk about people not paying their fair share. Let's talk about the bottom 50% who don't pay anything. Now again, they don't make money, right? If you make less than $40,000, I understand, you don't make a lot of money. But again, that's not my fault. I did not stop you from making money. You just don't. And so when you say, well, the rich don't pay their fair share, according to whom? According to whom and according to what numbers? Where do you get your data? Because this is from the Congressional Budget Office. These are the numbers. This is a non-partisan look at taxes. These are just the numbers, right? There's nothing around this. There's no partisan effort to distort or misrepresent the facts here. What we're doing is we're talking about how are we going to pay for these outlandish programs. That it's not only Bernie Sanders. There are a lot of Democrats running for president right now in the Senate who are advocating for these things. How do we pay for them is a question that they don't seem to get asked in a real way. When you try and outline how Bernie Sanders is going to pay for things, again, you get someone who just goes off and demagogues. All he's going to do is demonize the wealthy. And you say, okay, so the wealthy's bad. It's bad to be rich, according to Bernie Sanders. But the rich fund the country already. They already do. If you look at a 1%er, they are paying their fair share. That is true. Now, again, how do we pay for things? What are we going to do? How would we fix our tax system to make it a little more fair? Well, you don't attack the top 1%. You don't attack them. What we might do is we look at this crony capitalist system that we're living in, where we're giving welfare to corporations. Now that I am much more sympathetic to. If you want to talk about corporations, yeah, why are we giving them tax incentives to build factories in cities? New York was going to give Amazon some ridiculous amount in tax breaks. And you say, why are we doing that? Amazon is going to build a factory. You don't need to bribe them. There's a lot of things going around that's talking about Amazon paid $0 in federal taxes. Okay, that is not entirely true. They still pay taxes. They have to pay tax in every state in which they have a warehouse, for example. They pay taxes on transactions. They pay a lot in taxes, even if they don't pay a federal tax. Which again, I don't know enough about to even comment on how much they may have paid. But my point is that what we can do is talk about corporate taxes, but even adjusting our corporate tax rate is not going to pay for all these things. We're not going to pay trillions of dollars to cancel student debt and medical debt, to fund college for everyone, to build more public transport. I would agree that the next president of the United States should have an infrastructure package. You want to talk about a function of government? Infrastructure. That is one of them that I will absolutely support. But tying infrastructure into a federal jobs program, which is what Bernie Sanders did, no, we don't do that. We don't just give people jobs. The idea that the federal government is going to create employment opportunities is not true. It's just not true. What we're going to do is we're going to wind up employing a lot of people to do nothing, and then the federal government just pays them to do nothing. We got to get away from that. That's not good. And the idea, again, it just is a complete disconnect from reality with people running. When they start talking about taxes, when they start talking about their grand plans, you say, hey, what about the fact that we are in debt as a nation? What are we going to do about that? Because you want to spend a bunch of money, and you might have a way to pay for it, but we already owe a bunch of money. We have trillions of dollars in debt right now. How are we going to fix that problem? Because that is the interesting question. It's not, what are your grand plans? What do you want to do in the future? What are we going to pay? What are we going to pay for? How are you going to fix the country? If you want to fix the country, attack the deficit. Attack the amount of debt that we have, that China holds right now, for example. We got to talk about that stuff, because that is the important stuff. Bernie Sanders' grandiose utopian plans are not feasible. We do not have the money for it. And the idea that we are going to be able to just magically pay for them because we'll tax rich people, it's just not going to true. There is a theory in economics that no Democrat appears to be familiar with. One of the interesting things that happened, and you saw it recently with the Donald Trump tax cuts. Donald Trump cut taxes, and everyone said this is terrible. Again, the deficit grew. That's bad. But Donald Trump cut taxes, and what happened to the amount of tax money that the United States brought in? It went up. We brought in more tax money than we had the previous year. Now, why did we do that? The reason is because of a principle in economics called the Laffer curve. The Laffer curve, for those who don't know, and no Democrat appears familiar with, because they just don't. They've never taken an economics class. Again, I don't have a degree in economics. I've read some books. I've taken some classes, but I don't have a degree in economics. But I understand this in principle because it makes sense. The idea being that if you tax people too much, if you tax them at too high a rate, your revenue that you will take in goes down, because it becomes more beneficial for people to find ways around the law, the tax loopholes. So you hide money offshore. You create trusts. You set up other, again, tricky legal ways to keep your money in tax shelters, tax havens, from the government. And what winds up happening is that the amount of revenue goes down. Now, the argument is where the Laffer curve peaks and actually dips, and I believe it changes over time. There's not a set number that says 40% is where your absolute peak, and then you go down. People argue, and it changes over time. It changes depending on the situation, the culture, where you're at. But this principle makes sense. If you start taxing the rich, now you already tax the top 1% at a ridiculous rate, then it becomes more beneficial for them just to not pay taxes, because they say, well, why am I doing all this work when I could just open a trust, hide my money in an LLC, I could move it overseas, I don't have to pay taxes on this, and the rich have access to do these things because it's a benefit of being rich. You can afford a really nice tax lawyer who will teach you how to cheat the system. Donald Trump did this. Everyone talking about his tax returns. Donald Trump said, people pointed out, hey, look, you had all these years, you didn't pay taxes. And you know what he said, which I thought was brilliant because it's absolutely true. He's like, yeah, I'm smart. I don't pay taxes. There's something to that, right? The idea that people attack him. Oh, look, he barely even paid taxes. Yeah, if I could not pay taxes, I wouldn't pay taxes. If I had a way around it, oh, yeah. If I got to keep all my money, oh, yeah, I think most people would be okay with paying less money to the government if there was a nice legal recourse to do so. Now, again, you talk about cheating, it's a little different, but if you can find a legal way to do it, I'm sure most people would agree with Donald Trump that this is an area where we're all like, yeah, I'm smart, I don't pay taxes. So my point is, you're going to just pay for these billions and then trillions of dollars by taxing the top 1%. You're going to watch your revenue dip off. You're going to run a higher deficit, more debt, and you're going to bankrupt our country. Now, this is Bernie Sanders' grand plan. He doesn't want to bankrupt the country, but it will. It will bankrupt the country, and there's nothing to be done about it if he just got to have his way. Unfortunately, again, it doesn't matter what Democrat gets up there at this point. There's not a Democrat who doesn't want to spend massive amounts of money implementing terrible programs. Now, whether it's college for all, whether it's wiping student debt, which again Elizabeth Warren wants to do, whether it's any one of the number of programs. Oh, don't even get me started on reparations. We're not even going to go there today. But reparations, if you're what's her name? The quick one, Marianne Williamson. Or I guess a couple other people who've come out in support for it recently. But anyway, my point is, for this entire episode, if you're going to take anything away, it is this. We are on the verge of a catastrophe. Right? You're looking right now at an inverted yield curve. We have all the things that point towards recession. And Democrats want to come into power and they want to spend. Now, this is just not going to help our situation. We owe trillions of dollars as is. We cannot spend more money than we take in. It just, we have been doing it. We have been living on borrowed time for entirely too long. For people of a generation older than myself, 1 generation, 2 generations ago, they started this trend where the idea was you can just spend whatever you want and we'll worry about it in the future. And you have people who have been in the government who have just cried out about this, and no one listens. No one listens because it is politically toxic to say, hey, we need to talk about Medicare and Social Security. We need to cut some of this, or we need to raise tax substantially. That is political suicide. You can't advocate for cutting Social Security and expect to get elected to office. So therefore, politicians just will not say it. They won't come out and talk about the fact that we don't know how we pay for Social Security, and it's coming up quicker than we realize. Medicare within 10 years, Social Security within 20 years. We don't know how to fix these problems. And if you're a politician and you say that, good luck getting elected. And so it's easier. It's easier to be a politician like Bernie Sanders, who just comes out and he says, the rich are evil, the 1% need to pay their share, and I'm with you, everyone else who's living a regular day-to-day job, and I'm going to make your life better. Because I'm going to make your life better because I'm going to get rid of your problems. I'm going to solve them myself. I'm going to get rid of your debt. I'm going to make you go to college for free. I'm not going to make you, but I'm going to allow you to go to college for free. I'm going to give you health care. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. The government can solve your problems. And it's easy to win. It's easy to win people over like that because you look at this and say, wow, I have problems and you're going to solve them. That's great. But in reality, that's not what government does. It doesn't solve your problems. Government creates your problems. And then they pretend to help fix them. And then sometimes they do fix them. And you say, wow, thanks, government. But the fact is that they created the problem in the first place. So the government's going to solve the student debt crisis. Well, who's responsible for that? There's a lot of factors. One of the factors is the federal government is responsible for the student debt crisis. So you say, oh, well, thanks for helping fix a problem that you started. The medical debt crisis, the healthcare system. Well, whose fault is it that prices in healthcare are ridiculous? Well, a lot of it has to do with Medicare and the government's terrible running of that program and some of the stupid laws that govern it. Okay, well, if you help fix it, that's great. But again, you caused the problem in the first place. So that's what Bernie Sanders is going to do. He's going to ride in on a horse, possibly wearing a cape. I don't know. Maybe pretending to be a superhero, and he is going to fix your problems. He's going to scoop you up in his arms, and he's going to fly you to safety. And you're gonna be up there, and you're gonna look down on the world, and you're gonna say, "Wow, thanks government, you saved my life." And in reality, his right hand is in your back pocket, taking your wallet, and then just handing you that money and saying, "Look, I solved your problem. Here you go." And you say, "Wow, thanks." That's Bernie Sanders' plan. He's going to take your wallet and then give it back to you and say, "Look, I fixed your problem." But in reality, if you're in the bottom 50%, he's not. He's going to just take my wallet and give it to you. And again, that's not really fair, but that's his plan. This is why I'm glad we live in a republic and not a democracy. Anyway, so that's going to be the main thrust of my argument this week. We do have a special announcement this week I'm very happy about. We're going to give a fond farewell to my least favorite presidential candidate, Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten Gillibrand dropped out this week, guys. Now it broke my heart because I enjoyed watching how terrible she did and everything because she's the worst. She was the worst candidate in the field, and she dropped out. Now I got to find a new least favorite person in the field. I don't know who it'll be. It'd be easy to pick Marianne Williamson because she's so kooky, but she's kind of fun. She's kind of fun. I don't like her positions, but she's kind of kooky and weird. That's kind of nice. So I don't know. We'll pick one. It's probably going to be Kamala Harris, if I'm being honest. It's probably going to be her, but I don't know that for sure. I'm going to have to really take a hard look at the field. I can tell you that I am glad that there are a couple. Possibly Beto. Beto is always terrible. He's not doing well, and he's getting worse. I don't know what's happening. He's fallen off. He's fallen off the cliff of sanity, and he just started becoming this angry, ranting person. I don't know what happened, but I don't know. We'll take a look at the field. A couple people I still like are still in. Andrew Yang. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I like Andrew Yang. He's fun. He's cool. He's very intelligent. He is a technocrat at heart, and I like that. I like people who, like Elizabeth Warren says, has a plan. I like that. I like that people have plans. If you're really in the weeds, if you really know your stuff, I like that a lot. So I like Andrew Yang. I've listened to him talk a lot. He's a very thoughtful guy. Again, I don't agree with him on a lot, but he's interesting at least. But I don't know. I don't really have a favorite on the Democratic side right now. I mean, he is my favorite, but I don't have one who I would say, I wish that person was president. I wish I did because as everyone knows, I say it all the time. I might support some of Donald Trump's policies, but I don't like him as a person, and he won't be able to get my vote. I just don't see that happening. The Democrats would really have to put someone terrible up, and even then, I'd probably have to wind up voting third party, just because I don't know if I can. I don't know if I could do it. This week we didn't have any questions. No questions, no comments, nothing to address at the end here. So, as I encourage everyone every week, please write me in anything that you want to ask me. I am an open book. We could talk about politics. You can ask personal questions. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. Shoot me an email at tcchrestman.com. For those of you on YouTube, you could leave a comment, and I'm sure I will see it. I'm still getting notifications about comments on YouTube, so I will see it at some point. Make sure you like and subscribe. That'd be great. For those of you who are listening on Apple Podcast, subscribe. Make sure you drop in those reviews. That really helps us in the rankings there. This week we're going to end with a book recommendation. This is an old one, oldie but goodie. I recently read this. I saw it. Bought it at a book fair randomly because it was small. It was 90, 100 pages. I can't remember, but it's small. So I was like, I'll read this in a day, and it's interesting. I don't know anything about this person, but I found United We Stand by Ross Perot. It's the book he wrote in 1992 when he was running for president. And I was reading this book and I said, wow, this is exactly the same problem that we're running into today. So his entire thing was about the deficit. This is what Ross Perot was. I was one when Ross Perot ran for president, so I obviously don't remember him. I don't know much about him, but I always find it interesting to read books that people write when they're running for president. So you learn interesting things. Anyway, I'm reading this book, and I'm saying to myself, these are the exact same problems we're talking about 20 years later, 25 years later, whatever the case may be. And it was an interesting read, and you can read it fairly quickly. I'm sure you could find it on Amazon for cheap, but basically his entire thing was talking about the deficit, which is my big thing. Democrat, Republican, I don't care who's in office. Let's talk about the deficit because it's our biggest problem. So anyway, United We Stand, Ross Perot. Check it out. It was good. I liked it. It was an interesting read, at least. That is about it for this week's Chrestman conversation. So everyone out there, take it easy. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you back here next Monday.